Whether it's bad planning, bad luck, bad timing, or bad inventions, well-intentioned bad decisions have plagued history for thousands of years. Welcome to Historic Hindsight. Hello and welcome to another episode of Historic Hindsight. I'm John, that's Tom, and today we're going to talk to you about bad guys from the East.
Bad guys from the East. That's right, Johnny. It's our first round of the East Front. Although I did realize when I was doing the research for this, we totally have one competition that's not so much East on this. But you know what? Hey, look.
We tried.
Our rules aren't really rules as much as guidelines.
Well, also our locations apparently are also just guidelines.
Yeah, they're just guidelines. Well, to be fair, one of the guys comes from Africa, so it's not really the West, and it's also not really the East. It's kind of this limbo area.
Yeah, we'll just throw it in wherever we want. African countries are used to that.
They're used to being exploited a little bit.
We'll draw the lines. Don't worry about it.
Well, our first matchup today, Johnny, it's going to be between Pol Pot and Stalin. So we've got two people who are just awful human beings. And Pol Pot, this is already going to preemptive, who's probably going to win this round. Pol Pot models everything he does after Stalin.
Okay.
He is nicknamed the Cambodian Stalin. So, if you're nicknamed after this other guy you're facing off against, chances are you're probably not going to win this round.
Well, but I don't know. The student can become the master also sometimes.
The student can very much become the master.
So maybe he learned.
Just jump right.
Yeah, maybe he learned from his pitfalls and mistakes, or how to be more awful, or took his ideas and expanded them.
Yep.
So let's not be so closed-minded.
If you haven't watched the last two episodes we've done on our world's worst person, we do have a head-to-head competition. It's a 32 people bracket, I think, is what we wound up with. We do the number of total kills that they have, the mean/mode.
Yeah, it was 16 people, and then there was an 18 playing, so 24 people altogether.
Okay, yeah, sure, whatever. However many it was, I don't do the math. That not my department. And so we do the means and the mode in which they killed the people, and then their social impact. And every time I do a little bit of very short, brief clibbit of their resume, so to speak, on why they are an awful person. So first up, we got ourselves some Pol Pot action going on, a.k.a. the Cambodian Stalin, who literally designed his rule of Stalin's during his 1975 to 1979 rule of Cambodia. So
4 short years.
Wow, not a very long rule.
That's not super successful. That's a term, a presidential term in America.
Mm-hmm. A little bit less, actually, because he doesn't serve that full 4-year term. It's like 3.5. But his real name is Salazar, and he is responsible for 2 million Cambodian deaths when he took over Cambodia and turned it into a communist state.
Okay, well, that's kind of impressive, though.
2 million in 3.5 years? Yeah, that's pretty good. He hated city dwellers, and literally, once he became in power, emptied the capital of Phnom Penh, or Phnom Penh. I can't.
I think you nailed it.
Sorry.
He hated city dwellers?
Yeah. He wanted the entire country to become peasants, including the ruling class was supposed to be peasants. So everybody had to give up all their wealth.
So who gets that wealth?
Him.
Oh, just him.
Probably, yeah.
So it's literally like he wants to go back, he wants to make it like King of England, 1300s.
I have all the wealth,
yeah.
You give, yep.
And then
everybody has to farm.
Serfs.
So he empties the capital of 2.5 million residents, makes everybody turn in all their possessions, turns them into peasants. So it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, doesn't matter if you're a doctor, doesn't matter what your skill set is, you're now going to be a farmer. I don't see how this would backslide.
Where do they all go?
Well, they go into the countryside, Johnny, where they farm rice.
Just everybody.
Just everybody has to farm rice.
So
everybody has a quota. The farmland is now owned by the state and not individual people.
They must have so much rice.
Well, Johnny, they never actually met their quota on how much rice they were to make because
no one knew how to farm rice.
Get a doctor and say, hey, go farm rice and see what happens. It's going to work out real well for you.
It's a very different skill set, I think.
Yeah, just a little bit. Anyone breaking any rule was sent to a punishment detention camp. Anyone not meeting quota was severely disciplined / killed.
That's a theme here among that we've been developing over the course of this is all these people who are demanding amount of work from their peasants. I wonder, did they all get it from one person, or is that just a natural transition to where you're like, well, you're not meeting the quota, so I'm going to make it harder to meet the quota.
To meet the quota. Yeah, I think maybe they're thinking to rule out of fear.
I get.
Like
I mean,
ant thing you were talking about,
yeah.
but I at some point, like there's a diminishing return here. Children were ripped from their parents and sent into the military because apparently child soldiers are not a bad thing in Cambodia at this time.
Well, nobody expects a child soldier.
Right? Most of these 2 million deaths either come from direct executions because they weren't following the party line, or starvation because, well, we weren't meeting quotas,
Right.
or punishment in the detention camps. He was so hated by other communists that North Vietnam invaded Cambodia after the Americans left the Vietnam War. They're like, look, this guy's out of control. We got to calm his shit.
They took a page out of the old American playbook and like, hey, we gotta protect somebody here, but they probably really needed to.
Yeah, and North Vietnam was easily able to take over Cambodia because, well, most of his military he didn't trust, and so
Oh yeah,
hard to defend your border.
At some point, you have to have people left to help protect you in the case of, I don't know, a country invading, for instance.
Yep. He would be ousted out of power and flee into China, where he would like seek solitude for a long time. He would still like run his secret organization and try to take over Cambodia again. But in 1997, he was actually arrested by his own people because they got sick of his shit.
Yeah, he sounds like a real nice guy, though.
And he was put in house arrest where he would die less than a year later in 1998 of a heart attack.
Oh, well done there, though. House arrest. 2 million
For
deaths.
2 million people deaths. House arrest.
House arrest. That's not bad.
I do have to point out that the Americans, obviously in this time frame during the Vietnam War, we did bomb the shit out of Cambodia too.
Yeah.
But when the North Vietnamese took over Cambodia, we didn't like that, and we did like briefly try to put him back into power.
We got jealous that somebody was doing something, and so we're like, no, let's bring it back to how it was before. That's so
Yeah,
stupid.
the Americans, our foreign policy has always been really good since Woodrow Wilson.
He set us off on the right path.
He really did. He is the face-off against Stalin, his role model here. Fun fact for you at home, I have a cat named Meowsif Stalin, so, he already wins my heart a little bit.
So this is basically, if I like Pol Pot, I gotta really convince you.
Yeah, you're gonna have to really convince me.
Let's hear about Stalin,
I don't
though.
Look, listen. I don't actually like. He's a horrible, evil
Now,
person.
real
I want to
quick-
preface. I don't really like him, but
Real quick on Pol Pot, he didn't actively execute anybody. This was under his rule, ordered execution.
under his rule, his orders, he's not personally
He's not pulling the
plowing
trigger
people,
like Che Guevara was.
Che Guevara.
Che
No, he wasn't
Guevara.
actually Che Guevara. He was Joseph Stalin was actually born. I'm going to butcher the shit out of this. Joseph Bezerinos ze Yugoslavili.
Yeah, no, you nailed it.
Close enough. No, I nailed it. He earned the nickname Stalin, which means man of the steel hand, under Lenin, and he successfully got this nickname because he was the party's muscle.
Yeah.
So whenever Lenin didn't like somebody, he sent Stalin in to, calm things down.
And was he an actual hitman? Or did he hire
I
hitmen?
mean, he was the head of the wing of the, like, compared to the SS. Like, he's the head of the SS.
Gotcha.
Like, he's Hitler's equivalent of, like, the punishment wing.
Gotcha.
He should never have actually become the leader of the Soviet Union. Like, Lenin liked him. And the only reason he got anywhere was because Lenin liked him. And Lenin was the only one in the party that liked him. Trotsky hated the guy, and Trotsky doesn't make it much after
Yeah.
Stalin
You want to know the fun thing
takes over
about
by
like
force.
Russia, or if this was the USSR or whatever this was? Is only
Yep.
one person has to like you.
Yeah, pretty much. And when it's the ruler, it's okay.
That's the person.
Uh,
Yeah, that's the one that you need.
After Lenin's death, he would go about correcting people's opinions of him and would gain the leadership of all the Soviet Union because, well, if you didn't like him, he'd just have you
Yeah,
killed.
no, that's a quick way to garner support for sure.
And by correcting people's opinions from his rule in 1929 to the end in 1953, he is credited with at least 10 million deaths. But those are like the confirmed numbers. And then depending on how you want to calculate, like, is he responsible for the Soviet Union's deaths during World War II, that kind of
Right.
stuff, he's upwards of almost 60 million.
Now, I imagine a lot of that's starvation, or no?
You would think. Now, there's
No,
another guy later on our list that a lot of that is starvation.
this
No.
isn't the case.
No.
This is like concentration camp esque or
This
actual
is intentional
concentration
purges.
camps,
Yeah.
or yeah,
Or no, this is intentional purges. So
burning
one of such
villages and cities and bombing them and all that shit down.
yeah,
Cool.
I'll give you a rundown of his little war crimes here. He killed 20,000 prisoners, Polish prisoners, in 1940, and blamed the Nazis. So what people forget at home is the Russians and the Nazis were actually friendly at the start of World War II, and they took over Poland together at the start of World War II.
And then Russia
and Stalin
started
killed
blaming the Nazis for all the shit they were doing, and the Nazis were like,
these
"No,
20.
we didn't do
I
that."
swear, these 20,000 Polish guys, the Nazis killed them. But they were in the East. The Nazis hadn't even gotten there yet. They did it.
And the Nazis
Trust
are
me,
like,
they did.
"No, we didn't do that. We were busy killing other people over here."
Yeah, I don't know why everybody hates the Polish, but damn, they sure as shit hated the Polish at this time.
It's a pretty country.
He would let 6 to 8 million starve in 1932 to 1933. So he did have a lot that was starvation, but
Yeah,
it wasn't like a whoopsie starvation like we had with somebody else that's on our list. It was an intentional starvation where he had enough grain to feed the people, but instead he exported it out of the country to make money to buy industries, and then let the people starve. But by people, they were Ukrainians, so we really don't care.
I mean, hardly people.
Yeah, hardly people. In 1936 to 1938, he conducted the Great Purge, where over 2 million people were sent to labor camps, kidnapped, and executed, including 2/3 of his general staff and his military. He killed 2/3 of his entire leadership in his military. 2/3.
I mean, that's that's the majority. Isn't that like 2/3 majority gets the vote?
Hey, well, 2/3 of this
Apparently-
majority got killed.
Apparently, they had the vote, and now they don't anymore. So problem solved.
Among the many mass exterminations that he had. This is why I overlooked. I know it sounds awful overlooking 6 to 8 million starving people, but like he had many purges in which he killed many millions of people.
Yeah.
One of which was the Great Terror, which had the Vinnytsia massacre, which the Soviet secret police murdered at least 9,432 people
How?
just outright, and like in one sitting. Just the
That's
secret
so
police,
much
the
ammo.
KGB would knock on your door and just pop,
And just
pop,
bang.
pop.
That's it.
Yep. At least 1 million people will die in his detention camps. He is credited, like I said, up to a high of 60 million people's deaths. When you watch World War II, like soldiers' deaths in that total, which he shouldn't get all of those, but he should get at least 15,000 of those deaths because his order of not one step backwards meant shoot anybody who retreats, which led to his secret police killing at least documented 15,000 Soviet soldiers.
And we know
So-
how accurate documentations are, and they're never either understatement or overstatement, whichever one makes it look better.
And in this case, I guarantee you that's an understatement of those numbers. My favorite fact about him so far is his ironic move, which has no parallels to today. We will not connect any parallels to today. I promise you that. Historic
I'm
hindsight
not
is
promising
apolitical
anything. I
again.
haven't heard of this. What's going on here? What did he do?
He made up a plot that villainized doctors.
Oh,
He then imprisoned all the best doctors in the Soviet Union because he didn't trust them because they were educated. And right after he did this, he would have a stroke, at which he would die from the stroke because there were no doctors to treat. This one's easy, Johnny. Stalin has to move
I
on.
mean, I kind of liked Pol Pot before, but I was
I did. I
ignorant
didn't like.
of Stalin, and yeah, I think it's clear. I think it's
I. I I have to. I have to admit, I really didn't like this matchup because Pol Pot should be out of the first round,
right.
especially with one of our later brackets that we have. Like those two guys in our later bracket should not have. Like, neither of them should move on. But Pol Pot's an awful, awful human being.
Yeah,
But he's not Joseph Stalin.
right. Yeah, and
Like,
that's fair.
and this is a very brief. We'll get into more depth in later episodes. This is brief. Like he did a lot worse than just this.
Well,
But this is just a quick
right,
summation.
but I mean the thing is between these two is that everything was very similar in what they did, how they did it, and all that. Stalin just did it
But one
worse.
people, yeah, yeah,
Like,
one person is at least 10 million credited to him, and
right.
the other one's 2 million.
Yeah,
So
it's 5 times worse at minimum. So Stalin moves on, and we move on to our next matchup.
our next matchup is another two of my favorite guys, and I hate this matchup too. And I think we're going to have a disagreement on this one with who we want to move on, but we'll get there. So the first guy is Vlad the Impaler.
I always want to call him
You
Vlad
know,
the Impala. I don't know why.
and you know he's going to be a good quality human being when he's nicknamed the Impaler.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not for hugs and snugs.
yeah, that's the funny thing. Most of people throughout history, they got like they were given nicknames that were made to make them look. Alexander the Great, for example, was not great, but he just went with the nail on the head. Vlad the Impaler. I like
Yep.
it.
Yep. And he's going to face off against Chairman Mao Zedong. So, good, solid matchup
I like
here.
this. I'm excited for this one.
So first, Vlad the Impaler was actually born Vlad Dracul III, or Dracula, meaning son of Dracul. Originally, in the Romanian language tongue, Dracul meant dragon, but in the modern tongue, it means devil. So,
I wonder why.
Yep. After his father and one of his brothers were killed in a power coup, he consolidated his power by inviting all of the rivals to a banquet at his castle.
Nice.
He then stabbed them all,
Oh.
and while they were still alive, flailing, impaled them on spikes. And by impale, I mean he would take the wooden spike or metal spike,
Yeah.
put it in your genitals, and hoist you up on that spike, where you would slowly slide down it, where the spike would hopefully, the goal was, it to come out your mouth.
I mean,
you
if
would
you
die.
lined everything up correctly, presumably.
Yeah. It would. And you would die a very, very. And it wasn't instantaneous death. It would take several hours to several days to bleed out.
I mean, they're not
So-
conscious though, alive or not.
I would-
the body
I would
shuts
hope not.
down the brain there.
I would hope so. That's how he handled his rivals. Now, there's a lot that goes into Vlad the Impaler. He was actually a very Christian person, quote unquote, and he hated the Islamic religion, specifically the Ottoman Empire, because they actually captured him, and he was like forced to live with his brother in captivity, where that hatred just
Yeah.
seethed.
Yeah.
And so when he was released back to his homeland,
He was naturally, as a Christian, a very forgiving person and didn't hold grudges.
No, he did not at all. By 1462, he secured his crown to the Valetian throne, which is now basically Romania. And he earned the nickname due to, well, his favorite method of torture, which is impaling
Yeah.
people. Like, that's what he did.
It is effective.
But to be fair, that wasn't all he did. He also was partial to disemboweling, beheading, and boiling people alive.
Ooh.
So,
Ooh,
what the fuck?
ooh, boiling.
Yes.
F that.
Boiling you alive. You weren't dead. He'd throw your live carcass into a boiling vat.
That's like a mixture of burning and drowning to death, which are two of the worst ways to go.
Yes. Yep. Two of the worst. Like, I don't want to go either of those ways. Those are my biggest fears, to either like burn to death
Oh.
or die to death or drown to death. But
Yeah.
whew, that's both in one. His brutality was meant to be a message to the Ottoman Empire and the Islamic religion as a whole.
Message sent.
So he was intentionally brutal,
Yeah.
so that his reputation would precede him and people would
Naturally, yeah.
surrender or not
Right.
fight him. In one instance, he took 20,000 captured Ottoman soldiers and impaled them and lined the road with all of their carcasses as he left the Ottoman Empire. So when the Ottoman army marched in, they were greeted with 20,000 impaled soldiers.
So, assuming he puts them on a road, creates a path for them, that's 10,000 on each side. Each one's going to take up, 3 feet? So, 30,000 feet worth of impaled dead people.
Yep.
It's miles.
As a devout Christian, Johnny, his brutality did not extend to just the outside pagan or Islamic world. No, no, no. It was internal as well. He was very, very devout in that you had to be married to have sex, Johnny.
Right. Of course.
It was a mortal sin if you weren't.
Naturally.
So if you were a woman and you got caught having sex before marriage, you would be impaled.
Right. It's her fault. Exclusive.
It's her fault. Yes, because
Naturally.
the guy, there was no punishment to the guys.
No.
Punishment to the guys, just the woman, impale her.
Right. That tracks, really.
That's a very brief rundown of Vlad the Impaler.
All right.
Oh, by the way, he is credited with Bram Stroman's or Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, okay,
the
yeah,
whole Dracula
right.
legend is attributed. Although there's really no evidence to suggest that, other than that the original author went to Romania and kind of got a feel for how evil
Right, just the
Vlad
darkness
was,
and everything.
but that's about the only connection. Like Vlad, like there's rumors that Vlad drank the blood of his impaled victims, but that's
that probably came.
probably more
Dracula came, and then they
after Dracula.
put
Yeah,
it back
yeah,
onto him.
attached it to him. Yeah, yep. But either way, the name Dracula is still it's him.
Yeah.
It is his name, son of Dracul.
There you
So he faces off against Chairman Mao Zedong.
go. Okay.
He is credited with the largest death toll in human history, with the deaths of up to 70 million people.
Not bad.
Most of this is due to the Great Chinese Famine that he's caused when he killed all those sparrows. So watch our episode on the Four Pest campaign because most of his deaths are actually attributed to that.
Yeah, that was a wild story there. That's a good episode. I like that one. Go back and check that out.
We'll link it. We'll put it up in the thingy
Yeah.
thing at the end of the thingy thing for you guys. You'll be able to check it out. When he took over China, he also, like previous communists, hated the wealthy people and landowners and city dwellers for some reason. And he executed all the wealthy landowners and took their land and gave it back to the people. And by people, I mean him.
Naturally. He was going to give it to everybody, but then how do you divvy it up? And it's just a logistical nightmare. So it's best if he just keeps it.
Most of his atrocities, like I said, would come under the Great Leap Forward or the Great Chinese Famine, which happened from 1958 to 1962, which he meant to bring China into the modern world. It was legitimately with good intentions. He's just a moron.
Right. Okay. Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, for one instance, you do have the Four Pest campaign where he tried to get rid of the pests in China, and one of the pests was sparrows because they were eating the grain.
Yeah. Except they weren't.
Not knowing that
bugs.
if you kill them, the locust plague, and now all your crops are gone.
Yeah.
He also made it that everybody had to produce grain, specifically rice. So your option for food in the winter was bread. So you have to sustain on bread alone in the winter because we don't have to farm any animals or make any other, produce besides bread.
Why does everybody only want people to produce food?
I don't know, Johnny.
Like,
ask a communist leader. I don't
do they
know.
not like who's making clothes and shit?
Right? This would also directly result after the starvation that they were like, oh shit, we need food. So he encouraged you to go out and, you want to know why we have a shortage of lions and tigers and bears? Well, tigers. Why we have a shortage of tigers? Yeah, he was hunting them for meat.
Yeah. Well, also, and now sex powders.
Well, that too. Yes, there is that. There is that as well. His cruel farming practices have estimated to 1 million of the Chinese population committing suicide instead of starving.
Which
And he's also
is
credited with
essentially
around
starving, right?
Well, yeah, they're like, instead of starving to death, I'm just going to off myself so I don't have to deal with that. 2.5 million more would die due to, well, torture and beating of those who didn't toe the party line and weren't meeting quotas.
Naturally. Yep.
But here's the thing. This is where I'm going to start my argument for Vlad the Impaler.
Oh, I'm on board.
Mao is dumb.
Yeah.
And let me he's not intentionally cruel. He's just dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And let me point this out. I'm going to paint you a picture of Mao real quick. He refused to brush his teeth. His doctor said, "You have to brush your teeth." His idea of brushing his teeth was to drink tea and chew on the tea leaves, which led to really gross, infected green pus in his mouth and, green tinting because, well, tea.
Yeah.
When his doctor said, "You really have to brush your teeth," he said, "Do you ever see a tiger brush his teeth?"
Yes.
He's just
actually.
dumb.
But in any case.
Well, in Pakistan, one of the rulers of Pakistan came over to China and brought with them mangoes. This is the first time the Chinese people ever had mangoes. The fruit was so sweet that literally, because of Mao and his love for the mangoes, spread a cult of mangoes where people worshipped the mango. In fact, at one point, if you got caught saying anything bad about mangoes, it could lead to your death. Again, the guy isn't so much outright intentionally cruel as just dumb and bizarre and weird.
Like he
When
didn't, his brain didn't develop past like 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, this will be a good... Oh, well, look at the birds. The birds are eating the rice because the rice is gone. Let's kill all the birds. And then, wait, where all these bugs come from? Why do they exist? Oh, the birds were eating those, and now that's why?
Oh, oops.
Yeah, and so, it's just ineptitude and stupidity.
Yeah, it's ineptitude.
Right.
It's not intentional cruelty.
Right.
Vlad the Impaler, intentionally cruel.
Right,
Like,
did you think I was going to go for Mao?
I don't. I think most viewers at home would have gone for Mao because of, well, he killed the most people, but it was
Right, but
he
here's
killed
the
the most
thing,
people because
like,
he's an idiot.
right. Well, and here's the thing: we're not finding the person who did the most damage or anything like that. It's the world's worst person, and a person who is intentionally going to impale people on spikes is worse than a person who's just kind of an idiot and kills people, but most on accident, or a lot on accident anyway.
Most of his deaths were starvation, which was accidental.
Right, which is
intentional.
ineptitude.
He also, when his doctors came, this is the last note and I'll jump off of him. When his doctors came up to him and said, "You probably should stop smoking because smoking's bad for you," he goes, no, smoking's deep breathing exercising.
Yeah, it's qigong or whatever.
Yeah.
Tai Chi stuff.
Well, I thought this was going to be a fight.
No.
Vlad the Impaler moves on.
No, Vlad the
Thankfully,
Impaler is a much worse person.
Vlad the
than Mao.
Impaler needs to go. Vlad the Impaler needs to go deep because, granted, his death toll is not as high as some of these other people, but
Worst
the
person.
cruelty in which he did it, and also that the time frame that he was doing it, like there's a lot less people running around when he's alive than in the 1950s.
Right. Well, and you take into consideration a lot of these world leaders are trying to better their countries with a lot of the things that they do. As wrong as they are, as stupid as they are, as evil as they are trying to better at least a portion of the country.
He was intentionally just a revenge-filled.
Yeah. He's like, I'm gonna just
like you will
murder some people and put them on
murder
spikes.
everybody.
Yeah.
All right, our next roundup here is going to be our non-Eastern bracket match between Hernan Cortez, aka the Spanish conquistador Cortez that we're all familiar with, and Charles Taylor, aka the president of Liberia, or king of Liberia, however you want to look at him.
I think he'd prefer king, probably.
Probably. Both awful people, but also both not really from the East. But, oh well.
Well, turns out there were more bad people from the West than the East.
Well, maybe. So we have Cortez. This guy is... he's our Spanish conquistador that conquered Mexico in 1521. And by conquer Mexico, I mean took over the Aztecs. And by take over the Aztecs, I mean slaughter them all.
Yeah.
Because
none of them left. Just...
Because he took one after Christopher Columbus's heart.
Yeah.
He is credited with at least 100,000 Aztec deaths, which sounds
That
small,
does.
but you have to remember how many people were actually living in these areas at that
Right, in
time
the
in the
1500s.
1500s. Like, this isn't, we don't have large cities of London, England. Here it's a tribal community. It's native people.
Oh, but I mean, the Aztec cities got large for the
They
time,
were large.
and they
Yes, they
were
were large for the time.
impressive.
And that's
Uh,
that's just the number of Aztecs that he's credited with killing.
right.
He did also conquer Cuba and was also friendly to the natives there. And his cursory
Yeah.
deaths from all of his spreading of syphilis and smallpox and all that stuff,
Oh,
and
wait, how
how
did
the
he
Spanish
spread
Empire
syphilis?
looked.
That's
Well, Johnny,
weird.
he got syphilis, and then he kept having relations that were consensual.
Consensual, for sure.
Wink.
Yeah.
With all the
Well, I
natives. Yeah.
mean, when you're a conqueror, you're a ladies' man, so no one can say no to that.
Right.
Literally, no one can say no.
No one can say no to it. Yep. During his conquest, he conducted the massacre of Cholula,
Nailed it.
where he rounded, rounded up in the square in front of the city's temples. He rounded up all the wealthy people, and his men blocked all the exits from the square and slaughtered the unarmed citizens, set the city afire, and in a matter of hours, the Spaniards and their allies killed anywhere between 3,000 and 30,000 people, depending on what the estimated population totals were. He killed the whole city.
Okay.
It's just whatever the estimated population totals
So,
were.
quick question. How surprised do you think the wealthy people are that they're the ones getting killed? Like, when stuff like this happens, do you think that the poor people that it's happening to are more resigned to it and less surprised because they're just like, oh, well, yeah, here we go. This is going to happen to me because why
It's
wouldn't
just
it?
another Friday
And the
night.
rich people are like, wait, no, no, I'm supposed to, can I buy my way out of this? No, you're just going to kill me and then take it anyway. Okay. That doesn't seem fair. I feel like they would get way more upset than, your
Yep.
typical citizen.
He would, like we already mentioned, he would get syphilis from one of his mistresses, and by mistresses I mean sex slaves that he stole from the population. And he liked them young too, from what
Of
history
course he
tends.
did,
But
because
at
he's a
this point in the
garbage human.
1520s, like, you were married at like 14, so I mean, what's the definition of young in their book?
I don't want to think about that.
Historic hindsight says the definition of young is anything under 18, but in
Yeah.
this historical context,
Well, it's your age divided by 2 plus 7.
that's
That's the acceptable age.
That's your appropriate. Well, once you're over 18.
No, even then it works.
The acceptable age is, well, no, I mean, no, it doesn't, John.
Yeah, 9 plus 7
You have
is
to
16, and that's age of consent in most states.
I still don't approve of that.
No, I mean, I'm not going to be down with it, but I'm just saying, like, the formula
No.
fits.
All right, fine, I guess. Anyways, he would capture Montezuma, who was the head of the Aztec Empire, and he would basically force lead through Montezuma. So Montezuma was his prisoner. He would lead the Aztec people
Right.
through Montezuma, who was his prisoner.
The puppet
This
master.
worked. Yeah, this worked until the Aztecs caught on that he was a puppet master. While Cortez was out and about gallivanting around, the Aztec people elected a new leader,
Oh,
started a revolution.
Yep.
When the Cortez's army followed and started killing everybody, there was this mass civil war panic in the capital. Cortez comes back. He gets Montezuma to come out onto the palace, whatever, whatever you want to call it, palace, the balcony or whatever, and say, "Hey, stop it! We are all one people. We love the Spanish." The crowd boos him, throws rocks at him, which he dies of his injuries 3 days later.
Huh.
So Cortez is directly responsible for Montezuma's death and the fall of the Aztec Empire, because, like
Not
I
bad.
said, he liked to intentionally spread smallpox wherever he went.
Was he
So,
intentionally
yep.
spreading smallpox?
Yeah, no, it was intentional. Like, he would,
Oh.
sick people, they would, like,
Oh,
gallivant the sick people around. Yeah, he was intentionally spreading it. It wasn't a whoopsie. It was like, this person's sick. Let's go get him to lick some people's faces.
okay. All right.
So yeah, intentionally spreading
What a
it.
trash
And,
human he is.
obviously enslaving people everywhere he went. So
Well, I mean, of the time, really. We can't put too much on him on there.
no, that's just kind of normal. Charles Taylor, aka he's facing off against Charles Taylor, aka the president of King of Liberia, who armed up the RUF in the Sierra Leone
Sierra
Civil War.
Leone.
That's the one. That's the one. Thank you,
Yeah,
Johnny.
you want to know how I
He would.
know that?
How
It's
do you know
because of
that?
a video game. Oh shit, what is it?
Modern
No, no,
Warfare.
no, 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 no.
Was that in that one?
It's the one where like the guy has grappling hooks and can plant bombs and stuff. It's like an open world GTA style, but it
God, that sounds like every video game that's come out in the last 5 years, Johnny.
Just Cause 3.
Oh, okay, great, great. So he messes up things in the Civil War there, but he also does it in Liberia as well. He exploits Liberia's tribal divisions and presides over a really gruesome, violent civil war that lasts 7 years, in which as many as 200,000 civilians are killed by him and his goons. And by him and his goons, I mean children soldiers, because he had a habit of employing children soldiers.
And then having them kill
everybody.
else.
Because
Good God.
who's afraid? Little Timmy, little 8-year-old Timmy running up to you. Oh, little Timmy, how are you doing? And then, bah, 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 bah. Little fucking Timmy mows you down.
Well, Timmy's about to get kicked in the face. He come running up on me.
They had a fun habit of lobbing off people's arms, legs, ears, noses, and fingers because that was fun to
That's
them.
like what? It's getting cliche at this point. This was in the 1900s. They're doing this.
This was 1990s, Johnny.
Dude,
This is recent.
figure it out, man. Like that's so cliche.
Well, they like to play games with their victims, Johnny. And they had a fun game with pregnant civilians that they would capture where they would guess the child's birth. They would have gender reveal parties, so to speak, Johnny. And by gender reveal parties, I mean they would guess.
And they didn't.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck.
They would guess, is it going to be a boy or a girl? And then they would cut the baby out of the mom and kill it in front of the mom and then kill the mom. So, gender reveal.
Oh my God.
Awful human beings.
He's worse.
When the Civil War would end, he would run for president of Liberia
In a nice, fair,
legitimate
general
elections.
election.
His slogan, and I shit you not, Johnny, he killed my ma, he killed my pa, but I'm gonna vote for him anyways. The silence says it all.
I mean,
His other slogan, Johnny,
that's just literally a threat.
Yeah, that's literally just a threat. He just
Because if you don't, you're going
100%
to end
just a
up like
threat.
Ma and Pa, is what he's saying.
Yep. His other campaign slogan was "Better the devil you know."
Yeah,
Is it though?
I like that.
This isn't our current American politics situation where like they're it isn't like the lesser of two evils. This is literally like you're threatening to kill us in your other campaign slogan. This isn't better the devil you know.
No, but he's saying like, you know me, you know that if you're with me, I won't kill you. So
Maybe
better that than somebody who will probably not kill you and probably is not a murderous psychopath who could give you freedoms or something. Don't worry about that guy.
He would be arrested. He would be arrested and convicted in the early 2000s, and his conviction would actually stand in 2012 of war crimes, including, and I quote, these are all of his charges: terrorism, murder, violence to life, which basically means like you murdered but you did it in a really gruesome way, rape, sex slavery, outrages upon personal dignity, violence to life again in a lesser degree where they didn't die but you just tortured them.
More of the cutting. That's the cutting the arms. And
That's the
legs
cutting
and
of death. That's
everything,
the lobbing up the ears. A category of other inhuman acts.
Just a
I'm
category
sure just a category of other inhuman acts.
That's literally the catch-all that the legal system came up with when they're like, all right, we can't like put every little thing in here. This is all the fucked up things that people are gonna do.
And this is everything else.
It'll be a wide net.
Conscripting a person under 15 to participate in hostilities.
Great.
Enslavement. And my favorite, Johnny, pillaging. It is 2012, and he got charged and convicted of pillaging.
Well, when you pillage, you pillage. You're like, everybody knows what pillaging is, and if he's doing that, then that's what are you gonna do? Like, I'm surprised it's a word that's on the books legally.
Yep. He is he is currently serving his time in England, and in 2017. he was caught in prison making phone calls to Liberia trying to influence politics in Liberia by,
Wait,
he
so
killed my mom, he killed my
we
pa, vote
broke
for
our
me.
rule here. Then he's still alive.
He is still alive. We did break our rule. We did break our rule.
So are we?
So,
But
so by
he's away for life, so he's essentially dead,
yeah, he's
except for the whole
he,
trying to still
well,
influence
he
things in
he only
Liberia.
he only got 50 years for all of that.
In 2012.
Yeah, I mean he's going to be
Oh,
dead
okay.
before he gets out, but like he only got 50 years.
That's not a lot for
Yeah,
those charges. It doesn't
no, it's
seem.
not. But so by default he really shouldn't go on because he's still alive.
No, I'm sorry. He's
But
worse.
he is worse. He is worse
Sorry.
than Cortez, so he'll move on. But I promise you, viewers at home, he's not making it
Yeah,
past next week. No,
jailer
no
dead.
way.
Jailer dead anyway. So,
He's
same
not going to make it
difference.
past the. Yeah, he's not going to make it past the next two
Oh,
guys that we got. I'll
this
tell you
is
that.
I've been waiting for this
This
one.
is Johnny's
I've been
favorite.
waiting for
This
this
is
one.
Johnny's favorite matchup. We've got Genghis Khan
Yes,
versus
sir.
Attila the Hun.
Let's go.
Attila the Hun. Both just great people
Oh.
from basically Mongolia area.
Yeah.
We'll start with Genghis Khan. He is the ruler and founder of the Mongol Empire, and he would rule from 1206 to 1227. He did have the largest empire in history by land
Yeah.
mass, and he did that through outright brutality.
Do you
Didn't like you? Lobbed off your head.
Do you have,
Don't follow him? Lobbed off your head.
do you have the numbers for the percentage of people?
Yes, we'll get there, Johnny. Don't jump the gun. That's the thing I want to end with. Yep, be quiet. Shh. In 1219, he led an invasion of Persia because they killed several of his emissaries that were trying to set up a trade route on the Silk Road. So
Oh,
basically,
well.
he sends emissaries. They kill a couple of his emissaries, and he says, "To hell with you!"
Yeah.
and just massacres the Persian Empire.
Yeah. So his responses are reasonable. Some might say.
Yeah, this led to millions of deaths
Oh.
in Persia in 1219. Millions of deaths in 1219. That is a significant amount of the population, which is a hell of a lot more than any of our other people have gotten to that point. Like, he might not have the total numbers, but when you calculate percentage of who was actually alive at the time, he has the total.
Well, and then just the planetary impact. You can see his impact in our carbon levels in the
yes,
atmosphere.
you can like legitimately when they go back and they do the studies of carbon impacts and that kind of stuff, you can see he had such an impact on the loss of life at the time that the ecological footprint of humanity dropped in this period from 1206 to 1227.
Yeah, the CO2 levels in the atmosphere dropped significantly
Yep.
because he murdered so many people and took their breath
Now
away.
he wasn't an entirely awful human being. Like if you would surrender him, he was fine with you. Like, hey, be loyal to me and I'll let you be. But
Well, yeah, it was
don't be
a
loyal to me.
it was a join or die, ride or
Join-
die type
join or die.
mentality.
Very much so. Very much so. His reputation of rape butchery preceded him everywhere he went, to the point where mentioning his name would lead women to commit suicide because they didn't want to be raped to death by him.
Like literally him, not his men.
Literally,
Not
by,
his men.
Literally by him.
Yes.
Him. His reputation.
didn't
Not
share
I mean,
with
his
his
men
men.
weren't great. He was doing a lot
Yeah,
of the raping and murdering and pillaging himself.
His men got whatever was left when he was done.
While it's impossible to know how many actually perished during the Mongol conquests, many historians put the number around 40 million. Censuses from the Middle Ages show that the population of China plummeted by tens of millions during Genghis' lifetime. And scholars estimate that he may have killed 3/4 of the modern-day Iran's population when he took over Iran. So,
Holy shit. So he's got some numbers on his side.
he's got
And
some
some
numbers on his
brutality
side.
on his side.
Modern estimates have it that the entire world's population was reduced by as much as 11% during the Mongol Empire.
11%.
Because of the Mongol Empire. 11% because of the Mongol Empire. Not because of all the wars that were going around in the world. No.
Exclusively
His
that.
wars.
Yeah. Just what
Yes,
he was
his
doing.
wars.
Jesus Christ.
Now, he did create the world's first postal system, so,
Hey, well done
mail-in
there.
voting wouldn't happen without him. After you were after you were conquered, he would assimilate your culture, assuming you weren't resisting. He would actually take your culture and assimilate
Yep.
it into the empire, much like the Romans did.
Yeah, it's how you grow an empire. Like
Yeah,
you
like you're not
just
just like
you get people to come to your side, and you say, okay, no, you can keep doing that, and we'll do it kind of this way, and then
weird, Johnny. Wasn't it after the Romans adopted Christianity that the Roman Empire fell?
was it?
Huh. Weird. I wonder what the coincidence is that. Oh, yeah, by the by, his raping was so prevalent that today nearly 8% of the entire male population that was once in Mongolia shares his genetic Y chromosome, or nearly 16 million people alive today are his direct descendants. And that wasn't through marriage and love.
Oh my God, that number is just
8% of every that's just the males.
right,
Because you can't track the female, because they tracked this through the Y chromosome,
right.
and they did this in 2013, I think, is when they ran
Yeah,
these numbers.
estimations are 1 in 5 can
Yeah,
track
one
it.
in five.
People.
In that, yeah, in what was the Mongolian Empire, are direct descendants of him.
Yeah,
Because
he raped somebody's mother.
raped so many mothers. He's a mother
All
raper.
of them.
Now he faces off Attila the Hun, who some might say, Genghis Khan was inspired by Attila the Hun, although not really, because the Huns didn't actually have any culture or written language or documented records. So really everything that we talk about with the Attila the Hun is kind of from the Roman perspective, and take it with a grain of salt.
So
he would rule the
we're
Huns from
looking at it from the
the
only the
victim standpoint.
victims are providing us with any sort of stories.
Yes,
Or,
because the Hun people were a nomadic tribe
yeah.
who didn't have designated cities, didn't have a designated culture, didn't have a written language.
So they weren't going around trying to grow an empire. They were just going around doing whatever the fuck they wanted.
Raping and pillaging.
Yeah.
Yep. Their goal was to get the Romans to pay them off, and like to get gold.
Nomadic
and,
pirates.
Yeah, nomadic pirates.
Land pirates.
There's only you have to continue to spread your purge farther and further out to get more and more gold to sustain yourself. He would rule from 434 to 453. The Roman Empire feared Attila and would call him the Scourge of God. Like many leaders of the time, he would kill his brother to solidify power.
That's how you do it, apparently.
Yeah, that's how you do it. He would go on a rampage. This is my favorite fact of him. He would go on a rampage of Western Rome because he was scorned by the Roman emperor's sister, Honoria, who she sent him a ring and asked for his assistance.
Okay.
He took that as a marriage proposal.
Oh, wasn't?
So then he said, "I want half the Western Roman Empire." Obviously, the Western Roman Emperor was like, "No," and she was like, "Ooh, I wanted your help. That was a payment. That wasn't like a, will you marry me?"
I just didn't have time to
pissed.
get down to the pawn shop and sell it for the silver, and so I just gave it straight to you.
He got pissed and invaded and took over half the Western Empire.
Man,
by
God, the
force.
tempers on these people. Like, this is why individual people can't have this much power. Because
Right?
it not just the power going to your head thing. It's just that quick temper. Like, and any thoughts that you've had where you're like, man, I want to kill this guy because somebody did something to you. Like, they just say that, but then they just can do it. It's just like, oh, man, I want to
do
kill
it because
this
they
guy.
have the power in the army, yeah.
Why don't you go do that for me? Good God.
He loved psychological warfare, and some might say he was one of the fathers of psychological warfare, because
Nice.
his soldiers liked to ride with the heads of their fallen enemies on their saddles as they went into combat.
Yeah,
So
that's a pretty hardcore look.
they that whole rebel yell has nothing on the Hun shriek
God.
of their shrieking soldiers riding on horseback coming at you with the heads of their victims on their horses. Like,
I mean, you're probably not going to be able to make out what the heads are until yours is getting severed from your body, to be fair.
probably. His troops were also favored of feigning retreat, letting the army come to them, and then turning around and just slaughtering
Yeah.
them.
The old psych.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not really
he
done.
did the old psych. They their goal was to basically get Rome to pay them off. So like they would go into areas, raid a city, that Roman governor of the city would be like, all right, hey, look, I'll give you a yearly tribute of X amount of
Right.
gold coins if you just leave us alone.
Yeah, they're I mean they're bandits,
Which
they're
worked ish, but when they decided that they got scorned, they would just invade you and say you didn't pay me enough gold. So like it
so,
meant
so
nothing.
they
There
were a
was no
little
like
too aggressive with it, but they're basically just
there was no honor.
yeah, they're just bandits going in and being like they're walking into a saloon, throwing over the tables and being like, "Hey, if you want us to stop this, you'll give us money."
Yeah. Now, to lose some points here for him as being a worse person, all this money, all this gold that he did, he actually gave it to his people. And from all accounts, he actually lived a meager life. Like, he didn't live in excess.
Mm,
He didn't wallow around in gold and
no,
wealth.
see, I
He
disagree
just
with you.
gave it to his people.
No, I'm on the other side of that. If he
It
wasn't
makes
in
it
it
bad
for the
because he.
gold, he just
Then
wanted
why
to
was he doing it?
murder and rape some
Gotcha.
folks.
Okay. All right. I can see what's wrong
Like
with that.
he's
I
like,
really
no,
do.
I don't need the money. I'm not in this for the money. I just want to wreck your life.
Fun fact: my favorite fact of Attila Hun. He loved his women. He was a polygamist. He had many wives.
Like, sure.
His last wife he would marry in 453 was named Ildico. Lidico.
Yeah, nailed it.
Ildico.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. She was a beautiful young wife, and traditional historians' accounts indicate that on the wedding night, Attila the Hun got a little drunk, had fun consummating the wedding,
Hmm.
keeled over backwards on the bed, and died by a nosebleed that caused him to drown. Like he passed out, had a nosebleed, drowned in his own blood,
Oh.
or had it, or probably had like modern medical says he probably had an aneurysm and died.
Well, but yeah, I mean, even then, people drown in their own vomit and everything else. You have a nosebleed, your head straight back. That's why they tell you to flip people over after you knock them out.
Yep. Well, he drowned on his own blood. Or other historic, like modern historians say that she probably, like his wife probably stabbed him. But there's no, like, I don't buy that one as much because, like, if his wife stabbed him, you'd think there would have been a bigger thing about it.
Yeah, I'm sure he
Like, there
had
would
the
have, you think
support.
somebody somewhere would have been like, she fucking killed him, let's kill her.
Yeah, I'm sure he had enough support from some of his, right hand men or whatever that were doing stuff for him that were seeing benefits from the work they were doing, and from everything going
Yeah.
on. And so if she murdered him, I think there would have been something about that.
Now this is a hard feat, Johnny, to determine who of these two is the worst
Nah, it's
person.
Genghis Khan.
All right, Genghis Khan.
For me,
I was like,
although Attila the Hun
I want
doing it like,
Attila the Hun is an awful person. He's an awful person, but he's also just a Gothic. Basically, he's a Gothic tribal leader.
right.
Like, he didn't create an empire. He didn't create a civilization. He didn't create much of anything. It was just raping and pillaging, which on one hand is bad.
Yeah.
But he didn't kill 11% of the world's population either.
Right. Well, and Genghis Khan's whole thing is he raped everybody himself.
He raped everybody. Yeah,
It wasn't just his
Like,
dudes running around. It was
to
him.
8% of the population in what is now
Yeah.
what was Mongolia.
Yeah, and so you imagine
related
he's
to
also
him
doing
still today.
he's doing a lot of the killing, he's doing a lot of the example setting. I mean, he's completely changing cultures and lives of most
in
of
a lot
Asia.
of regards, yeah, in a lot of regards, you're kind of the same person, but one just did it better than the
Yeah,
other.
it's the Pol Pot Stalin type deal.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a similar matchup, and Genghis Khan just did it better and to a greater extent.
Genghis Khan moves on. So in recap, we have Stalin, Joseph Stalin, who is going to be facing off against Vlad the Impaler, and damn it, am I going to hate that matchup
That's gonna be tough.
next week, because they're my two favorites. Facing off against Charles Taylor versus Genghis Khan, and I don't. That's not so much of a hard matchup.
Yeah, Genghis Khan. He kind of got the #1 seed in this matchup. It seems he's got an
I
easy
think
way
he
to
did.
the finals.
The semifinals, yeah. But either way, we'll see you next week, where we're going to actually do all of the quarterfinals. So on both East and West, we'll do all the quarterfinal bracket next week.
All right, that's it for this week in Historic Hindsight. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and join us next week when we break down the quarterfinals of our world's worst person bracket.